There once was a great empire that stretched from one end of the world to the other, an empire so large that it covered many lands and seas and ruled over millions of people. Its military was one of the largest in history, with tens of thousands of soldiers and chariots ready at a moment's notice to crush any rebellion or insurrection. And yet, despite its size and power, this empire would eventually fall and be no more. But before we get into the story of how such a powerful empire could fall so quickly, we must first start at the beginning, when it all began. The story takes place in the land of Egypt, where there lived a Hebrew man named Amram. Now, Amram wasn't just any Hebrew. He was a leader, a powerful man who ruled over his people with wisdom and strength. But as time passed, the Egyptians grew to fear and resent the Hebrews, believing that they were too powerful and influential in their society. So the Egyptian pharaoh, who was the ruler of all of Egypt, decided that he wanted to get rid of the Hebrews once and for all. And so he made a decree throughout all of Egypt that every Hebrew boy that was born must be thrown into the river Nile. This was a terrible and evil plan, but the pharaoh was determined to carry it out. Now, when Amram heard about the pharaoh's evil plan, he was afraid. He knew that if he didn't do something, then all of the Hebrew boys would be killed. So he did the only thing he could think of. He took his newborn son, which just so happened to be named Moses, and he went down to the river Nile, and he let Moses float away in a basket. Moses' basket floated down the river until it landed in front of Pharaoh's daughter, who was out walking by the river that day. When she saw Moses in the basket, she had mercy on him, and she took him in as her own son. She named him Moses, meaning drawn out, because he was drawn out of the water by fate. As Moses grew older, he learned about his heritage and the evil plan of the Pharaoh. He was furious and he wanted to do something about it, but he wasn't sure what to do. One day, Moses was out walking, and he saw an Egyptian soldier beating a Hebrew slave. Moses couldn't stand to see this injustice, so he stepped in and he killed the Egyptian. When this happened, Moses ran away and hid. Now God came to Moses in a burning bush and told him that he was chosen to lead the Hebrews out of slavery in Egypt and into the promised land. Moses was hesitant at first, but God reassured him and told him not to worry because he would be with him. And so Moses returned to Egypt and he confronted Pharaoh, demanding that he let the Hebrews go. The Pharaoh refused, though, saying that they were his slaves and that they would work for him forever. Moses was angry, so he performed 10 plagues upon the Egyptians. These plagues included turning water into blood, causing frogs to infest the land, and even killing every firstborn son in Egypt. Finally, after the 10th plague, the Pharaoh had enough. He was tired of Moses and God's shenanigans, and he finally agreed to let the Hebrews go. Now the Hebrews were overjoyed, and they prepared to leave Egypt. But God had one more thing to say. He told Moses that before they left, they had to sacrifice a lamb and put its blood above their door. This was to protect them from another plague that would kill all the firstborn sons in Egypt. The Hebrews followed Moses' instructions, and they sacrificed lambs and painted their blood above their doors. Then when the angel of death came to Egypt that night, he saw the blood above the doors, and he knew to pass over those houses. And so all the firstborn sons in Egypt were spared. Now when the morning came, the Hebrews realized that God had protected them, and they were very grateful. They knew that they owed their lives to God, and they were eager to follow him and do his will. And so the Hebrews left Egypt and they journeyed through the desert. For 40 days and 40 nights they wandered around the desert with no food or water. But God provided for them. He sent them manna to eat and water to drink, and he also sent them quail to eat and figs, grapes, and pomegranates to eat. After 40 days they arrived at Mount Sinai, where God gave them the 10 Commandments and told them how they should live their lives. The Hebrews were overjoyed when they heard these commandments because they knew that God wanted them to be good and do good things. So the Hebrews agreed to follow God and they became his people. And that is how the children of Israel escaped from Egyptian slavery and became the chosen people of God. It's a story of faith, hope, and deliverance that has been inspiring people for centuries. But what does this story teach us? What can we learn from the bravery of Moses or the faithfulness of the Hebrews? I believe that this story teaches us that no matter how hopeless things may seem, we can always have hope. No matter how difficult our circumstances may be, we can trust that God will deliver us. This is evident when the Hebrews were in slavery in Egypt. Their situation looked bleak. They were outnumbered and outgunned, and it seemed like there was no way out of their situation. But they held on to their faith in God and trusted that He would help them. And He did. God raised up Moses to lead them out of slavery, and He performed plagues upon Egypt to convince the Pharaoh to let the Hebrews go. We can also see this when the Hebrews were wandering in the desert. They were lost and hungry and thirsty, but they still trusted that God would take care of them. And He did. God provided for them by sending them food and water. This story also teaches us that we should never give up hope, no matter how difficult things may be. The Hebrews faced many challenges during their journey to the Promised Land. They encountered hostile people, difficult terrain, and their own doubts and fears. But through it all, they never lost hope. They knew that God was with them and that He would help them through whatever they faced. And in the end, their faith and obedience were rewarded when they entered the Promised Land. It's also important to remember that God doesn't always do things the way we expect. Sometimes His plans are different than ours, and we have to trust that He knows what He's doing. For example, when Moses was leading the Hebrews out of Egypt, he thought that they should march directly to the Promised Land. But God had a different plan. He told Moses that they needed to wander in the desert for 40 years before they were ready to enter the Promised Land. This wasn't what Moses or the Hebrews wanted to hear, but they had to trust that God knew what He was doing. The story also teaches us that we should be grateful for what we have. The Hebrews had every reason to complain and be ungrateful. They were in slavery, they were wandering in the desert, and they were facing many challenges. But instead of complaining, they should have been grateful for what they had. God had delivered them from slavery. He was taking care of their needs in the desert, and He was leading them to the Promised Land. Finally, this story teaches us to have faith in God and to know that He is with us no matter what we face. The Hebrews faced many challenges during their journey, but they knew that God was with them, and that gave them strength and courage to keep going. We can apply this lesson to our own lives by remembering that God is with us and that He will help us through whatever we face. In conclusion, the story of the Exodus is an important part of the Bible that teaches us many valuable lessons. It teaches us to never give up hope, to trust in God's plan, to be grateful for what we have, and to have faith in God. Let us remember these lessons as we continue our walk with Christ. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it has been a blessing to you. If it has, please like and share it with your friends. Also, don't forget to subscribe to receive notifications of our next videos. May the Lord bless you and keep you.